Welcome to PWE Music. I'm Dr. Patrick Englert, and today we have the final Clarinet Masterclass video for the low clarinet selections for TMEA 2023 All-State auditions, and that's going to be Etude number 4 from the Rose 32 Etudes. As always, the David Height edition. Let's get started. So, if you watched these videos before, you've heard me say it in pretty much every one, and that's because it's really important. But the number one thing we're going to talk about, as usual, is get with the metronome. And I say it in every one, but I try to give the reasons that you want to use it specifically for that one. Obviously, having good rhythm and timing is important, but let's talk about some of the specific reasons that we want to get with the metronome as soon as possible. This etude has a lot of articulation, and especially when we're talking about low clarinet, when we get into more technical etudes, you have to really work the fingers and be a little bit lighter and faster than you would be for soprano clarinet. And so staying in a reasonable tempo for you and not getting yourself into hot water is really important. You don't want to get going too fast and then you're going too fast for your tongue or too fast for your fingers, or maybe even too fast for the keys on the instrument, depending on how well your clarinet is adjusted. Get with the metronome as soon as possible. Keep a nice, steady, consistent tempo and have really good rhythm and keep it rock solid the whole way through. This etude also has a lot of repeated notes with articulation. And it may not seem like it, but those are even more apparent when you are speeding up or slowing down in the middle of it, because you can really hear the timing change between those notes. So it's even when you have the repeated notes, it's even more important to have it nice and consistent and similar. So building off of that, we want to focus on the articulation with this one and work towards getting a nice light and steady articulation. Just because we're playing bass clarinet doesn't mean your tongue has to be really heavy. We can still focus on tip of the tongue, tip of the reed, nice light T articulation, and keeping everything nice and consistent. We always want to be moving forward, and if the tongue gets too heavy, then we're going to start falling back on the beat and slowing down. So like I said before, we want to focus on light articulation with the front of the tongue, work on keeping the back of the tongue still, just use the front for articulation, tip of the tongue, tip of the reed. As I've said in other videos, you can practice this with a mirror or your phone camera facing you and watch under your chin. If you see a lot of motion here, that means your tongue is moving around too much. You want to stop that and be as still as you can under here, and just let the front of the tongue do the work. Again, as always, let the air help you out. Good, strong air support will also help you in this endeavor. Another practice strategy you can use is record yourself with the voice recorder on iPhone. I'm sure there's an Android analog as well. And one of the reasons you want to do that is you can actually see the sound wave of when you're done recording. And that's important because it gives you a visual of how consistent those articulations are. So if we look right at the beginning when we have repeated A's in measure 1, repeated E's in measure 2, right away if we record that and look at the sound wave, you're going to see if there's too much variation in length, in volume and such, just by looking at it. And so that's a really good tool to use when you're practicing your articulation as well. The next thing we'll cover is phrasing. So as I said before in the previous two topics, we want to keep moving forward. We never want to feel like we're falling backwards. And so we need to find the line that you want to take and follow that to its conclusion. Push forward, don't fall back. And this etude has a lot of changing notes on a beat, filling out the rest of the beat with repeated notes. So just looking quickly, an example would be like measure 14. We're repeating G's throughout, except on the downbeats where we have C, E, D, F natural. So the important thing we want to hear is we want to hear that third progression of C to E, D to F natural, rather than just sitting and hammering on those G's. That's another aspect of the phrasing that you really want to work towards figuring out and presenting as you want to. Don't worry so much about the repeated notes. I know we talked a lot about that with getting them consistent and nice clean articulation, but really when we're working on the phrasing, it's the changing notes that are going to be important and we want to bring out a little bit more. The last thing we're going to cover today is maybe not something that you'd think about, but an important thing nonetheless, is we want to be careful with these rests that have fermatas on them. Yes, we want to take our time, catch our breath, let our brain catch up, and give ourselves a little bit of time to just be ready for the next thing. But you want to be careful and don't let it get too long. So this is a common thing that people overlook when they're practicing. I know I can be guilty of it myself. But take some time when you're practicing and really practice how long you want those to be. If you don't give it really much thought before you're in the audition room, that's an easy place to fall into a pitfall of getting caught up in mistakes that happened before, thinking about other things, not focusing on what you need to do next. Practice the mental game as well, and practice how long you want those rests to be so that you don't find yourself kind of spacing out in that interim. That about covers it for Etude 4. This one's pretty straightforward, so you just want to get in the practice room with the metronome and get to it. As always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll be sure to address them. Like, subscribe, do the social media things, check out the Patreon while you're at it, and we'll see you in the next one. If you made it this far, thanks for watching through the entire video. I hope it was helpful. Normally this is where I have a card with links to my Patreon and my Etsy, but I wanted to take a second to give you an idea of what you're going to find at both of those. For my Patreon, there's one level, $5 a month, and that's to help keep these videos coming out. I know lessons can be expensive, and I want this information to be able to be found regardless of your situation, whether you can take lessons or not. The $5 a month also gets you access to a PWE Music Discord server, which if it's not up when you're watching this video, it should be soon. And as of right now, that's just an opportunity to ask me questions, get my thoughts on things, and hopefully as the community grows, you'll be able to get in touch with clarinetists and musicians from around the world. At my Etsy shop, you'll find custom woodworking, and applicable to this are custom reed cases. So as a woodworker, I enjoy making accessories for musical instruments, and everybody should have a reed case if you don't. And not that you need to have a fancy custom one, but I do offer 3D printed reed cases as well as custom wood cases. So hopefully you'll check out either one, give some support to the channel, and I'll keep these videos coming.